Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Ware. Tonight we're going to be visiting the Black Mountain College Museum plus Arts Center. Then I'm going to turn this over to Louise Klickman, our creator of SHAC. And Louise, it's for you.
Well, thank you. Welcome everybody today. I have told a lot of you about SHAC, and some of you I notice are new already, but I try to make this a little bit different each day. So today I spent the day writing a diary, a little bit different than the journal that you've been receiving each day. And you didn't receive a journal today because the diary is sort of a compilation of thoughts that's concise enough to go out to media. The good news is that we are getting national recognition. People are talking about this project all over the country. And I really want to thank you all for bringing SHAC to fruition with Bob and I. And we expect that in 2021, we'll be able to grow it some more and that you all will give us feedback so that we can go forward with studio tours and gallery tours, either live or more video programming. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that. We are still selling tickets. There are people coming on. You will get links for all of these programs. So over the holidays, you'll be able to share them with family. You'll be able to watch them at your leisure, and you'll be able to see things that you want to watch again, as well as new things that you may have missed. So for $55, we feel we're providing as much benefit as we can with 10 tours. I invite you all to email me, text me with ideas, testimonies, things you think we could do better. We've learned a lot on this journey, and we really appreciate all the interaction that we've gotten from you. So without any more about Sand Hill Artists Collective, I want to introduce you to my new best friend, Kate Everett, who is going to provide you with a fascinating history and show you some incredible work from the influences of Black Mountain College and Art Center, which you'll hear about all the incredible people who taught there and worked there, from Merce Cunningham to Buckminster Fuller, from I don't know, just on and on. Rauschenberg, I could go on. John Cage, but we don't know the anecdotes and we don't know the stories. So Kate is part about the art and part about the history. And we're very excited to have her with us today. So Kate, on to you, onwards and upwards.
Thank you, Louise. And thank you everyone for being here and taking this virtual time to be here in our gallery. I'm actually in the museum now, which we're very grateful for. And I'll be sharing kind of a virtual walkthrough of the exhibition, but then try to get you as many behind the scenes archival things as I can. So in some ways, virtual can kind of give you some extra sneak peeks that you wouldn't get in the door. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, actually, Bob, if you wouldn't mind giving me permission for that. So I wanted to start here with one of my favorite photos from Black Mountain College. This is an image from the early years at Black Mountain, where you can see the students is at the Blue Ridge Assembly. So this is the first campus of Black Mountain College, and as we'll talk about, they kind of moved around a little bit. But I wanted to give y'all kind of a grounding in the Black Mountain College history, and specifically its history as it relates to Western North Carolina, and then how that has expanded outwards. We as a museum are actually based in Asheville, and one thing that kind of came about in the founding of our museum was the fact that Black Mountain College's history and legacy was something that was so well known internationally and then was being lost here in the Western North Carolina region. So it means a lot to us to be able to reach all of you wherever you are, and then also have this hub in Western North Carolina. So as Louise mentioned, we have what I refer to as our heavy hitters of Black Mountain College, the people who are really iconic. So I'll kind of go through the story of Black Mountain. Some of you may be familiar, for some of you it might be a new history. But Black Mountain College was founded in 1933. That was the same year that the Bauhaus School of Design closed in Germany. During in the lead up to World War II, the Bauhaus was a major target for Hitler and the Nazi Party. A lot of intellectuals and educators and artists were fleeing Europe at that time and coming to the United States. Simultaneously, at Rollins College in Florida, there had been a progressive education initiative that was seeking to bring forward these liberal arts ideas, a lot of which put forth by John Dewey, the philosopher. And a lot of the focus on that was keeping arts at the center of everything and having students experience as they learn. Rather than learning information, you would learn by action. And so this progressive initiative started at Rollins and then quickly became a little bit too progressive for them. There was a major scandal happening. And John Andrew Rice, who was one of the professors at Rollins, was actually ousted from the college. And he, along with a group of other faculty members from Rollins, decided that they would start their own school. And that's how they wound up in Asheville. There were some connections here. They had spent some time here and decided that this really beautiful, area where you could kind of escape the rest of the world would be the perfect place to have this experimentation and education. And so John Andrew Rice knew that based on these Dewey philosophies, he wanted arts at the center, but he was not an artist and he knew no artists. And so he went to the people he knew who could help him. And one connection that they made was with Joseph and Annie Albers, who you can see it's on my right here, this couple embracing. Joseph and Annie came from the Bauhaus. Joseph was a master educator at the Bauhaus and Annie was an instructor in weaving. And they came in and started the art program at Black Mountain College. And because of that, there's a major influence of Bauhaus ideas there. And so it's kind of seen as one of the new Bauhauses in the United States for that reason. So I'll kind of keep working through this kind of roster of people to give you an idea of what the school was like when it existed. It was only in existence for 24 years. And I'll kind of move to the left from Joseph and Annie over to Merce Cunningham, who is shown here dancing at the college. Merce Cunningham came with his partner, John Cage, and actually started his dance company at Black Mountain College in 1952. And so it was a really influential place for him and for Cage to come and have this space of experimentation. And then we also have Buckminster Fuller, you can see here with all of his geodesic domes. The first large-scale geodesic dome was built at Black Mountain College by Fuller. He had come the year before and tried to build a dome out of Venetian blinds, but they could only afford half the amount of materials that they needed and it never stood, so it was referred to as the supine dome. But the following summer, he came back with students from Harvard and they were able to erect the first large-scale dome. And that's incredible to think that that happened just in this space 15 minutes from where we are now. And then moving over, we have one of my favorite alumna. This is Ruth Asawa. She's a Japanese American artist who came to Black Mountain College after being interned during World War II. She wanted to be an educator, but no schools would allow her to student teach as a Japanese American woman. And so some friends of hers, the Schmidt family and Ray Johnson, told her that she should come to Black Mountain College and she could study with some of the greatest artists in the world. And she formed lifelong friendships with Buckminster Fuller and with the Albers. Specifically, Buckminster Fuller actually built her and designed her wedding ring, which has a very kind of geodesic thing happening with it. And then kind of moving clockwise, I guess, we're looking at John Cage, who I was referring to earlier, the experimental composer. Here he is preparing a piano. So one way of looking at this was he was very focused on sound and the space between sounds. And so one of the projects that he was working on at Black Mountain was taking a piano and converting it into a more percussive instrument. really being able to make sounds that were original to the instrument and turn it into something different. That would involve laying between the wires different things such as screws and rubber, so that each note became a completely different tone. So those are the kinds of experiments that he was doing at the college. We also have Gwendolyn and Jacob Lawrence, who came to teach in the summer of 1946. Jacob came to teach figurative abstraction at the invitation of Josef Albers. I want to point out that Black Mountain College was the first college in the American South to integrate. They integrated 10 years before Brown v. Board of Education. Jacob Lawrence was just one of several African-American faculty members as well as students. We also have here Robert Rauschenberg, who I chose this picture to show you all because it shows the parties at Black Mountain College, which we want to do a whole exhibition on at some point. But here he is designing a centaur costume for one of the great parties that they would have on Saturday nights. And everyone you can imagine was developing these incredible outfits, and there'd be different themes every time. And then lastly, I'm also showing here Charles Olson, the poet, who in the later years of Black Mountain College took over as rector after the Albers left for Yale. And in the 1950s, that's when Black Mountain really turned towards a focus on poetry as well as craft. So quickly from there, because I want to get into the exhibition itself, I'm just going to tell you all a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we were founded in 1993, and we were founded completely independently of the college. There was no endowment, there was no direct line to our founding, but our founder, Mary Holden, was living in Paris and was hearing all about Black Mountain College. She'd grown up in Black Mountain, she had never heard of it before. So she decided that history needed to be preserved here in this region. And so we were founded at that time and have just steadily grown since then. I'm showing you a picture of our current home. This is somewhat new for us. We moved here in 2018. We're right on Pack Square Park in Asheville, and we have about 4 times the amount of gallery space that we had before, and we're able to do so much more. So you can see previous exhibitions. You'll see the gallery kind of in 360 in a minute. And I also wanted to point out that this is the first time we've ever been able to house our collection in-house with us. So I'm showing here a Ruth Asawa piece in our collection, and you can see over my shoulder, I'm not sure. She's also right there. And then also an example of contemporary performance. So Louise was asking me prior why we are a museum and art center. And that is based on the recommendation of Robert Rauschenberg, who saw museums as these stagnant, kind of dead institutions, and art centers are things that are living and have a presence into the future. So we have a twofold approach of both holding on to history and then also working with artists who are in that legacy of Black Mountain College. So I'm going to show you all a little quick video just about our collection, because the exhibition that we're going to be looking at is specifically looking at pieces that are new to our collection that kind of tell you the story of what kind of objects that we have on display and what our focus is as a collecting institution.
With the largest collection of artworks and ephemera by Black Mountain College artists, our collection spans over 90 years, highlighting the continuing impact of the college on art and culture. Our first pieces were gifted to the museum in the 1990s, when Black Mountain College was all but forgotten in the Western North Carolina region. Friends, alumni, and their families have since worked with us to build a collection that represents the varied stories of the Black Mountain College experience. Now, close to 30 years later, Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center houses a collection of over 3,000 objects, featuring everything from paintings to textiles, furniture to photographs, dating back to the 1920s and extending forward to include contemporary works by Black Mountain College alums, as well as select commissions by artists whose work connects to the college's legacy. The sampling featured in the exhibition From the Vault highlights recent gifts that enhance our understanding of alumni or faculty, their contributions over their lifetimes, and the lasting influence of Black Mountain College. Through over 50 exhibitions during its lifetime, Black Mountain College Museum and Arts Center has strived to celebrate the impact of each member of the Black Mountain College community. Our hope is that by coming through our doors, you will have the opportunity to encounter works by your favorite artists while discovering new and exciting stories to capture your imagination.
So I show you this so that you can hear my voice recorded instead of in person for a minute. But also to point out, as you hear this roster of artists that are at Black Mountain College, you can imagine almost all of them are represented in any museum worth their salt that exhibits modern or even early contemporary art. And so what makes our museum special is that we are the only museum in the world that's dedicated to that history. And we're the largest collection of Black Mountain College artists in the world, which we're very proud of as a relatively small institution. But what that means for us is that we can take pieces from all these various aspects of the college, including artworks by students after they left the college, kind of showing their progression of their careers, and then bring those things together into exhibitions that tell many different stories of the college and the different ways that people interacted, whether they're now seen as incredibly famous or people whose name you would otherwise wouldn't know. So with that in mind, I want to take you into this virtual exhibition of our current show. So here we are. I'll give y'all a little bird's eye view first. It's a little incomplete, but this gives you an idea of our upper gallery space. This kind of lost, ghostly area is the front of our museum. And back here, we also have a library that is open to the public. But to take you into the exhibition itself, there are 3 specific pieces that I wanted to focus on today. Right here, this beautiful large ceramic we're going to be looking at a little bit more closely, but I wanted to show this in the position it is in the gallery. These are works by Karen Carnes, who was an instructor in pottery at Black Mountain College. At the time, she was referred to as a faculty wife, which we will talk about a little bit more. But this is kind of showing her later work, which we find really important to do. And then actually back here, you can see this is a piece that she and her then husband, David Weinrib, who also taught with her at Black Mountain, they developed this coil-built fireplace when they were in residence at Stony Point, which was an outcropping of Black Mountain College in upstate New York. So we love seeing the ways that this Black Mountain College legacy has extended both through the individuals that were there and then in the creation of these communities that are very much inspired by that ethos. And again, we'll revisit these pieces in just a moment. Another piece that I wanted to show you as it stands in the gallery is this beautiful piece here. And really just to show you the scale of it. And we'll look at this a little bit more closely as well, but this is a watercolor piece actually by Sewell Silman, who was a student of Josef Albers at both Black Mountain College and at Yale, who played a key role in distributing Albers' ideas of color and color theory through the interaction of color. So again, we'll look at that more closely in just a moment. And the final piece that we'll be looking at that's currently in the exhibition is this one here, which is a really unique object that we feel very lucky to have recently acquired for our collection. This is the door to the weaving workshop and art room at Black Mountain College, which was assumed to have been lost until last year. This was something that a student did during her time at Black Mountain, and then when the school closed, she came back and she grabbed it and has held on to it. And thankfully, her family has given us this piece for our collection in the last year. And you'll have another quick video about that too, so you can kind of see the context of that. But to go back to our PowerPoint, let's see, here we go. Again, I wanted to kind of give y'all a little bit of a closer look at these objects. Virtual tours are great, but you can kind of miss out on the details. So this is an untitled boulder piece by Karen Carnes. This is from the late 1990s. It has a really specific story to it. Just to give you some background on Karen Carnes, She and her then husband, David Weinrib, led the first summer seminar in ceramics at Black Mountain College in 1952. It was a huge turning point for American craft as a whole, and definitely represents this really wonderful crystallizing moment of ceramics at Black Mountain. The Albers were very opposed to having a ceramics program when they were at Black Mountain from 1933 until 1949. So in the 1950s, there was this space opened up for ceramics and for craft with people like Karen Carnes, David Weinrib, Bernard Leach, who you can see his influence now with Mark Hewitt, who is, of course, has this major impact in this region. Shoji Hamada, Marguerite Wildenhain, another Bauhaus potter. And then, of course, my personal favorite, who's looking over my shoulder right now, is Mary Caroline or MC Richards. So there are so many incredible potters at Black Mountain. So I wanted to be sure to show this piece by Karen. So this piece has a unique history to it. As I mentioned, it's new to our collection. And you can see here on the right, these are some stills from a documentary called Don't Know, We'll See, the work of Karen Carnes, which is really beautiful. And I really suggest that you watch it if you have the chance. But in 1998, Karen Carnes, this documentary was being done on her life and her work. And she was conducting a wood fire kiln firing at the time, and had loaded these really large scale works into the kiln. And unfortunately, there was a kiln fire, and that fire destroyed both her studio and her home. So what you're seeing in these images are the kiln standing in the rubble of basically her life's work. It was this devastating, devastating accident. But then there's this beautiful moment in the documentary where they open the kiln, and you look inside, and there are these pristine, incredible ceramic pieces that were just fired in the most wonderful way. They've almost been preserved in the kiln. You can see here Karen kind of seeing those pieces for the first time, and she talks about how there was a trial by fire for these pieces. And this piece right here was in that kiln, which is this really incredible kind of symbol, I think, of Karen's resilience. She was a very strong person. She was definitely a community builder, and you can see that the entire ceramics community came around her at that time and rebuilt her home and studio. So this is a piece that is both, I think, really beautiful and also just a beautiful kind of emblematic example of her and her life. So the other piece to look at is this piece by Sol Silman that we were just looking at as it stands in the gallery. And I want to point out again that this is watercolor. It looks like a screen print, but what you're seeing here on the top, this kind of faint line, and then at the bottom, this darker line, is looking at this gradient of color. And so that is an assignment that you would often get in an Albers course, would be to take two colors or two shades, or I'm terrible at this kind of thing. I would be a terrible Albers student, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And you would be able to find the midtones and kind of fill in from white to gray to black. And that's something that every student at Black Mountain College had to do. The requirement was you had to take Josef Albers' course, and you had to take a course on Plato. Outside of that, you could study anything. There were engineers, scientists, really anyone at Black Mountain College. But at the heart of that, you had to learn these fundamentals of visual arts. And so Sol Silman is someone who took those practices and really never stopped experimenting with them. So this piece, which is a later piece by him, I believe it's from the 1970s, he's still iterating on these ideas of creating gradients and trying to find this precision and understanding of color. So Silman came to Black Mountain College, I believe, in 1948. And he actually came to study architecture, but then took a course with Albers and was just completely enamored with his teaching abilities and kind of discovered his place as a visual artist. And so when Albers left for Yale, Silman came back to Black Mountain, studied under a more, studied, I believe, under Joe Fiore, did not have the same relationship, and went to Yale and wound up studying further with Albers. And while at Yale, he did an exhibition of Albers' screen prints. They worked together very closely. And around that time, he and Norman Ives became friends and founded the Silman Ives Art Publishers. And they really created this groundbreaking space of exploring the minutiae of color and line and form and all these things that Albers taught Silman over the years and then implemented that into the creation of artist books. They worked with Jacob Lawrence, they worked with Roy Lichtenstein, and they're probably most famous for working with Albers on the interaction of color. And the interaction of color was something that Albers started developing at Black Mountain and then really was able to dive into at Yale. And it is a way of presenting his years of study of color and the teachings that he did in these incredible screen prints. And we actually have a copy of this in our library, and by appointment, you can come and you can flip through it, and it's definitely a good time. But you can kind of go through, and there's both these plates with the examples of the color, and then also kind of written instructions so you can understand pedagogically what you're looking at. And so lastly, again, I'm going to go back to a little video so that you can, I want to be able to show you more details from this particular piece. And we'll be looking at the door that we were just looking at in the gallery.
In the summer of 1942, students were just settling into the new Black Mountain College campus at Lake Eden. Construction was being completed on the new studies building, the hub of campus life where students would spend many of their days and nights at work in their designated study, between classes with faculty such as Joseph and Ani Albers. On the lower level of the studies building, open to the view of Lake Eden and the Seven Sisters Mountains, was a shared weaving workshop and art room. Student Faith Murray Britton would decorate the door to this shared classroom, where many of Black Mountain's greatest artistic discoveries were made. This door and Murray's painting were seemingly lost when the college closed in 1957. Thanks to Faith Murray Britton's resourcefulness and the generosity of her family, we can now share the story of this Black Mountain treasure with the world. A promising student in painting, Faith Murray came to Black Mountain College in 1941, where she focused her studies in visual arts. With her remaining time, she delved into other elements of campus life, including costume design and singing in the chorus. Murray's The Weaver was one of the first permanent artworks to be created at the Lake Eden campus, featuring student Dawn Page as a model and drawing from Faith Murray's mentorship by Joseph Albers. Depicting a weaver at work at a shuttlecraft loom, Murray's painting uses a limited color palette and a savvy use of negative space. Murray silhouettes the loom itself, using shadow to define its edges and allowing the shared material of rich wood to carry the loom's form and texture onto the surface of the door. During the Summer Art Institute of 1944, Britton would contribute to another large-scale project when she was chosen as a student assistant to fresco artist and painter Jean Charlot, a contemporary of Diego Rivera in the Mexican muralists. During this summer, Britton played a key role in the creation of the frescoes Inspiration and Knowledge, which remain beneath the studies building to this day. The door likely remained in place until the college's closure in 1957. It is thought that Britton, who was residing in Western North Carolina at the time, retrieved the door during this time of transition. She went on to be a prolific painter, maintaining her practice while also raising a family. While you may not find Faith Murray Britton's name in the canon of Black Mountain's most notable artists, she left an indelible mark that carries forward today.
So another reason I wanted to show y'all this video, in addition to just being able to appreciate this object, is again, I want to reiterate that part of what we do as storytellers here is focus on as many faculty and student members as possible. And this story actually came into our collection when we were working on our current exhibition, which has been extended and has now been up for almost a year, focusing on the women of Black Mountain College. And part of that process was being able to look at the women who formed the college and be able to track their lives and what they were able to do after the college. Any art historian or archivist knows that women get really difficult because their names change. So there are quite a few students who we kind of assumed were lost, and then we're able to find more information on and be able to progress them further. And we've also luckily had incredible relationships with most of the alumna who've come through. So it was a way to showcase all of their stories together. And Faith is definitely someone who you probably aren't familiar with her name, but she has an incredible presence on this campus in so many ways. The frescoes that were shown there that are still at the Lake Eden campus, which was the really iconic campus that they were able to spend most of their time at Black Mountain. I'm going to go to a little bit of a prettier view while I tell the story. That campus was closed in 1957 and was bought by what is now Camp Rockmont. That site is actually split between Camp Rockmont and Lake Eden Events. And if you've ever been to Leaf, then that is the Black Mountain College campus. And we also host events there twice a year. We do a walking tour as part of our conference. And we also do something called the Rehappening, which is where we envision those Saturday night parties at Black Mountain College and bring in contemporary artists to reactivate that space for performance and installations. But I say all this to say that those frescoes are still there and they had degraded over time, you can imagine. The studies building is kind of in the same situation. But we were able to this year finally secure funding to conserve and restore those frescoes. And so we'll be sharing more information in the next few weeks, but we are now able to understand what those frescoes looked like at the time that they were painted. And especially looking at Faith's role in that as a student assistant was really exciting for us. So I wanted to now hop over to our Museum from Home page to kind of start the process of inviting you to get to know us a little bit better. So this is something you'll find on our homepage. When you go to our homepage, you'll see a pop-up for Museum from Home. You'll find it under this Explore tab as well. And once you get here, this is something we started in March when most other museums were starting these Museum from Home initiatives. And then of course, with our basis in Black Mountain, we kind of decided to take it in our own direction and do things a little bit differently, which is what we like to do. So we have a collection of digital exhibitions that you can look through. This one here actually just premiered today and we're really excited about it. We invited UK artists, it's a couple, they're referred to as Leap Then Look, did a 10-day digital residency with us that lived on Instagram, which was something that we have never done before. And that was done in July when we were really just trying to take advantage of the fact that we couldn't do things the way we used to. So let's try to come up with the best way forward. And they did an incredible, incredible job diving into our archives and creating new works. So if you go here, you'll be able to visit the digital exhibition that has been formed out of that residency. We also are very active on Instagram. It is my baby, so please give us a follow. It is at B&C Museum. And you can see here, this is a quick video from Leap Then Look's Active Archive digital residency. We also do more historical kind of anecdotes. So if you've enjoyed kind of the storytelling aspect here, that's what I try to do most days over on our Instagram. And I really wanted to show you all this section. We have been commissioning performances from artists throughout this entire crisis. It's something that we have always done. We have a major focus on contemporary performance and specifically really innovative, groundbreaking performance in the tradition of people like Cage and Cunningham. So here you'll be able to see we have a lot of live stream performances, things that were performed here in our gallery. And there's a little bit of something for everybody. So I would definitely invite you to take a look here. Right here, we have a performance that's really close to my heart of We Insist, Max Roach's Freedom Now Suite, which was a civil rights just landmark of jazz. And that was performed in our gallery last year. We have a podcast. We also, if you're ever interested, made a Spotify playlist. So if you ever want to dive into that, we also have an online open source journal. So this is really a resource for scholars and just anyone interested in the history of Black Mountain. And then lastly, I'll kind of show you all this last element of our Museum from Home page, which is our programs, which involve a lot of interviews with authors and scholars and artists, talking about their work and talking about the history of Black Mountain. I would also point out, this is something that I would really encourage y'all to watch. This is a conversation between Russell Williams, who is the son of Alma Stone Williams, who was the first African-American student at Black Mountain College. He discusses her life with the scholar Joseph Pathanti, and she was one of the most incredible women. And I just really encourage you to take some time to look into her story. So I'll kind of end here. We're going to kind of jump back and forth, but if you do want to kind of dive in further, once Stern Museum from homepage kind of catches your imagination, and maybe you want to dive into the history of the college a little bit more, we have publishing has been a major aspect of who we are since the very beginning. We have published catalogs, dossiers on Black Mountain College artists, and we are also proud stewards of the Jargon Society, which was a small independent press founded by Jonathan Williams, who was a native of Western North Carolina, who went to Black Mountain College and then started this underground but hugely influential independent press, which we actually have an exhibition on downstairs, which I also would encourage you to come and see if you're able. But the Jargon Society publications, our own personal publications, as well as this curated selection of books about or by Black Mountain College artists and writers, is all available at BMC Books, which we'll look at in just a second. This is just a sampling of what we have. Unfortunately, we've sold out of our mugs, which we're very sad about. Those are made by Emily Vandermeer, who is a potter out in Marshall, North Carolina. And then I also wanted to point out to you that we do have a membership program. So we are a nonprofit. We have been really supported by our individual members since the start. We were really grassroots. We didn't even have a home for the first little bit, about a decade of our history. We were really nomadic and very scrappy, and we very much kind of looked to our base and our individual members as, you know, our backbone of how we're able to do what we do. We have members who've been members for the entirety of our history, and they're really the ones who've gotten us to where we are today. And that is something that just keeps growing, and we're just really hoping that we can welcome as many people into that family as possible. So if anything that I've said has resonated with you and you're interested in learning more about membership, we have many different levels starting at $35 and even going down from there for students and educators, and then going up to whatever you would want to join at. We have year-round benefits, and a big part of that is also just reduced or free admission to any of our events. This kind of live engagement and all being together is really important for us. So I'll give y'all just a quick tour of our shop, and then we'll just hop into Q&As, because I really want to be able to hear from y'all and hear your voices. So just to give you a little quick overview, if you're interested in the history of the college, I would invite you to check out our essentials here. This is on the homepage of bmcbooks.com. This is what I refer to as the Bible of Black Mountain College. It is beautiful. So if you're looking for a coffee table book or any kind of gift for an art lover, this is it. And this right here is the first book that was really written on the college. It's really comprehensive, and I would encourage that as well. This is a selection from our current, our most recent publication of an exhibition that we had here. And then I'm going to show y'all how to get to it real fast, but right up here is our membership section. So you'll be able to go there and explore the many different kind of levels of membership that we have. And you can take your time and look through that at your leisure, because again, I want to be able to hear from y'all. So I would love to kind of open things up to questions at this point. Yeah.
I have received some questions, but before I do, the whole idea behind this Q&A period is that we have wanted to make this feel like you are in your living room, or my living room maybe, and just talking to each other, that you've had this incredible presentation. Kate, the history is enthralling, and to be able to weave it together with the incredible art, and you can see the influences in that art and how it's impacted not only people today, but Asheville artists that we've seen along this tour adventure that we've had. And anyway, if we could get some conversation started here, with some questions. I think, Bob, people can talk to each other. How does this work, please?
Well, I have been turning on people's microphones over the course of the last minute, so you should be able to just jump in and talk. Otherwise, there is the Q&A icon at the top of your screen. You can click on that, and that allows you to type in a question. And my daughter in Philadelphia, who is a former curator at the Delaware Center for Contemporary Art, has asked what ultimately led to the college's closure.
I love that question because it's
Just type my question in.
it has one of the most scandalous answers out of any of our history.
Oh, do tell.
I know. So the short answer is money. You can imagine you have a whole group of very avant-garde artists together. They were not very good at fundraising. They were constantly fundraising. If you're interested in the history, I invite you to go to the Western Regional Archives, who are, again, just 15 minutes from us, and they house all of the archival documents of the college, including fundraising letters, student documents, grades. Believe it or not, there were grades at Black Mountain. They didn't really count for much, but they were there. Anyway, so they were not great at fundraising. They were always struggling for money. But one saving grace for them was the GI Bill. And so they had, as the war was winding down, they started kind of having these citizenship courses and trying to promote the kind of patriotic aspect of Black Mountain College as this place that is very much based in democracy, which you can imagine there is a huge refugee and immigrant community at Black Mountain College. So there was already a lot of suspicion about the people that were there. So they're trying to do this PR spin of, hey, we want to get on the GI Bill, so let's really kind of push ourselves as an American institution. And that worked, and they got on the GI Bill, and people like Robert Rauschenberg and many, many others came to Black Mountain College because of the GI Bill. Now we're moving into the 1950s, you start moving into McCarthyism, and Black Mountain College, which is already very much populated by people who have FBI files on them. We had a selection of those in a previous exhibition, and actually if you go to the digital exhibition on our Museum from homepage, War Politics at Black Mountain College, you can look into some of those FBI files, which is very fun. But the Veterans Administration started questioning, is Black Mountain College really a legitimate institution? So they opened up an investigation through the FBI. So the FBI planted a few agents in the Black Mountain College community to try to suss out if it was a communist cell in the mountains of North Carolina. And at this point, there are 9 members of faculty and 7 students at Black Mountain. So 2 FBI agents are going to really stand out. So the students were doing everything in their power to mess with them. They'd like walk around with no shoes on in the snow, and they'd put out cigarettes on each other, and it was just crazy. And so there are write-ups about Black Mountain College, which are very interesting to read. But ultimately what happened there was no charges of, there was no formal blacklisting. There was no really kind of FBI charges that came out of this, but the Veterans Administration did decide after that investigation to cut funding to the students there on the GI Bill. And at that point, that was, I think, 5 out of the 7 students. So at that point, there was just no way to recover financially, and they had to sell off the campus and part ways.
We've got another question here. Susan, it's great. Yeah, someday somebody should do an investigation of the FBI as a cultural mover, shall we say, or perhaps cultural blocker. So Susan Hirschfield has written, you said that the Albers would not allow pottery and ceramics to be taught. Is that because they didn't consider ceramics as an art, or what's the difference between ceramics, pottery, and art?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was, I'm gonna try to keep this concise, but I'm going back to the Bauhaus here. So there were ceramic studios at the Bauhaus. There was, for a period of time, wheel-thrown ceramics, and then moved more towards slip-cast porcelain, more of a kind of production pottery aspect. And that was really kind of looking at this Bauhaus idea of working with materials in order to optimize that material. And so when the Albers came to Black Mountain College, their understanding of ceramics was very much informed by the Bauhaus. And so, for an example, Josef Albers, before you were allowed to touch a paintbrush, touch a pen, anything, you had to learn how to work with construction paper. You had to learn how to work with just simple, unmalleable color and form. And from his perspective, ceramics was too malleable. And it was not something that you could really learn the foundations of art from. It was considered in this way craft. And so that was what a lot of the pushback was for ceramics at Black Mountain College, really just looking at the material itself. And Albers really feeling that that didn't fit into this idea of teaching the fundamentals of visual art to his students. So it wasn't until he left that the pot shop was established, and they were able to have this kind of flourishing of craft at Black Mountain College. You can almost make a parallel with someone like Ani Albers, who uses textiles, these things that we refer to as craft, but is using it within the context of modern art. The fiber is being used the way that you would create a modernist painting. It's just utilizing the material differently. And when it came to ceramics, they didn't feel that that kind of bridging could be made, if that makes sense. I don't agree with it, but that was their thinking.
Well, we've certainly seen a lot of modern ceramics these days merging a lot of those things that were thought to be exclusive from each other. That's very interesting.
Exactly. And kind of along those lines, thinking about someone like Ruth Asawa, who was crocheting wire in the creation of her pieces. And because she was a Japanese American woman and because she was crocheting, she was completely left out of the conversation of modern art and was considered a craft artist. And because of that, had almost no representation up until the later years of her life. And we've really only seen her flourish in the last 5 years. So I think, you know, we're always having these conversations about art and craft. And thankfully, as you mentioned, those lines are being blurred now, and it opens up pathways for so many artists.
Marcia had to bail off here, but she wanted to thank you. She said that she was really enjoying this. She has another webinar to attend. I wanted to say that I was a student at Berkeley in the early 1970s. And of course, just down the road from us was the UC Santa Cruz campus, which, you know, we all loved. It was built into the woods, and you just sort of wandered through the redwood forest from one building to another. And I hadn't realized at the time, not until I visited Black Mountain, that really UC Santa Cruz was an offshoot of Black Mountain, as were Oberlin and half a dozen other colleges that picked up on that thread after Black Mountain closed and took some of that same philosophy of education to heart. You want to talk about some of those other institutions that spun off from it?
Yeah, I always want to go back to Warren Wilson, actually, because they've got an interesting history where Warren Wilson College, which for those of you who aren't familiar with this area, Warren Wilson is in Swannanoa, which is backed up right to the Black Mountain College campus. And at the time that Black Mountain College existed, Warren Wilson was the farm school. So Black Mountain College, I didn't mention this, but they had a farm. They completely were self-sufficient with their farm. But these were a bunch of city kids, and when the pigs got sick, they'd go to the farm school and they would work together on that. So there's always been this relationship between Warren Wilson and Black Mountain College. So when Warren Wilson made the switch to a liberal arts curriculum, they took a lot of notes from Black Mountain College. And I think because of this basis in farming and cohabitational living, there was so much of that kind of that ethos of living and working together that was so critical to the Black Mountain College experience. Because when we think about these artists collaborating, they're collaborating in the studio, they're also collaborating in the kitchen. And we had one student mention that one of the greatest teachers she had at Black Mountain College was MC Richards, and she never took a class with her, but they were on dishwashing duty together. So I think that kind of ties into this idea that the classroom experience has to be expanded out from there, which is something that I think that kind of lesson of being able to play and live live in that way, as you mentioned, is exactly that ethos that's carried.
So it's not really fair to say that Black Mountain College closed in 1957 so much as that it just became the source of a sort of diaspora around the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think especially with places like Stony Point, Yale, the the new Bauhaus in Chicago, there was this exchange going on the entire time, and everyone who came to Black Mountain College carried a little bit of it back to where they came from.
Well, it's a great institution that we're really lucky to have locally here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Are
Any
there-
other questions?
Yeah.
This is Jean McLaughlin. I studied art history at UNC Chapel Hill, and that's how I first came to know about Black Mountain College. And then my very first year out of college, I taught at a school called Charlotte Latin School in Charlotte. And the French teacher there had been a Black Mountain College student. She had studied there for her years. And it was like just such a rich experience to be able to kind of have learned about the school theoretically, and then to meet someone who was embodying that form of learning, that kind of multidisciplinary, cross-discipline, playful attitude towards learning, and how that fit with the way I wanted to be teaching art. So we just kind of became these fast friends around the principles that you've been describing. And I just want to say, Kate, what a fantastic presentation. I've just so loved this. And the last thing I'll say is that I think the conferences have just been, so invigorating. Do you have plans for another one coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, we're hurry up and waiting, like everybody. But we're definitely, it'll happen as soon as it can. We're back at UNC Asheville. We try to do that every single year. So yeah, as soon as we know more, everyone else will know more. But we're hoping in the next year we can all get together, because our conferences they're like, this Black Mountain College community, we talk about this diaspora of students and faculty. And then there's also those like you who've been so touched by this legacy, and all these scholars who Black Mountain College is their whole life. And having that week a year for everyone to converge is very powerful and very fun. So yeah, we're hoping soon we'll be able to make an announcement about that.
I'd like to make just a point about diaspora. So I think that what's so very fascinating is how so much talent, creative talent, left Europe, particularly due to Nazi Germany, and all came to one place. And I'm not sure exactly how that kind of migration happened, but the reality of it is we see in the values that were practiced at Black Mountain what we're trying to have happen here again in our country today.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm not asking a very specific question, but I'd like to know a little bit about how much talent. I mean, you had a lot of incredibly prominent Jewish artists come from Europe, primarily Central Europe, to Black Mountain. People like Jacob Lawrence, Ruth Asawa. I mean, it's interesting that this incredible amount of diversity all clustered together in these mountains. I don't know if you can expand on that or not.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because I'm going to tentatively announce something, which is that we're working on an exhibition right now. We're kind of centering it on the idea of global citizenship. And so part of that is looking at these kind of geographic webs of influence coming from all these different places, specifically the idea of citizenship, the idea of living somewhere that denies you citizenship, being able to be somewhere where you are forced to flee and then coming and establishing a new community like I did at Black Mountain College. And so in that process, we've actually been making, Alice Sieberl, our program director, has been very diligently making a list of the refugee and immigrant faculty and students and where they came from. And it is an incredible list that we'll be able to share as part of that exhibition, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, that's what made Black Mountain College so special, was it was this place where I guess I'd like to never refer to it as a utopia, because it wasn't. It had a lot of issues, and that's something that we try to be very aware of. But you think about this place, you know, integrated in the 1940s, was working towards kind of these Pan-American influences. Really, if they had the funding, they would have loved to send their students across the world for these exchange programs. They were working with the Japanese American Student Union, the students that were interned during World War II, trying to get students to come to Black Mountain. They really had this socially progressive kind of vision for the school. And then that's happening in the Jim Crow South. And in this environment that was also, you know, both very familiar and very new to the people that were there. And so that was always an interesting conversation too, of, you know, even when the college was founded in the 1930s, you have people who were fleeing Nazi Germany coming in and then dealing with Jim Crow South laws, and saying, what is our role going to be in this? So there's so many stories to tell. So essentially, we'll keep you posted, but we're hoping to do an entire exhibition kind of around those ideas.
Well, it's very strategic, the timing, and it would be a wonderful opportunity if the board, foundations, advisors to Black Mountain were able to set what was done here so long ago as an example of perhaps what we might be able to do again in this country.
That's what we're always trying to do. And that's also, you know, why we try to work with contemporary artists who, you know, are engaged with the community and engaged with what is happening on a human level today. Because I think as a museum, it can be easy to detach from, you know, from the world itself, but through this kind of global network of artists and through our community, we're able to engage the way that Black Mountain College would have wanted to engage.
Well, this was really brilliant, Kate. Anybody else out there who would like to chime in at this point?
I've got a quick one, Betty Kagan here. I'm in St. Louis, which is seems far away at times. I've had the pleasure of traveling out there and meeting Louise and Marilee and Jean through Penland. We had here in St. Louis at Pulitzer a year or so ago an Asawa exhibit, which unfortunately did not travel after that, but it had examples of Asawa's drawing that she did at Black Mountain College. That was the first time I'd heard about Black Mountain College. So that was really fascinating to me. And then to hear about Albers, Ani Albers, I'm very interested in fiber and weaving, and then the move into what Asawa was doing. But I'm quite struck by the fact of all these strong women. So does the exhibit that you have online kind of deal with that, all the women that were at the college?
Yeah, we've got, so the Women of Black Mountain College digital exhibition is, I think, our largest digital exhibition right now. And part of what we've been doing with that is creating a student and faculty roster so that you can click on them and be able to learn all about them. To be very blunt, this is like, it's part of the exhibition. This is my wall of badass women that every time you walk into the museum, you have to see. Yeah, we've been very, I mean, it was, I just want to point out, in the 1940s, during the war, Black Mountain College was mainly women because the men were off at war. And they built buildings, they kept the farm going, they got everything going. And there were these incredible matriarchal figures like Ani Albers and MC Richards. And, you know, I think the whole story of the women there is really powerful. So This Women of Black Mountain College exhibition is online, and then because you're in St. Louis, but if anyone local wants to come and see it, it's been condensed from when we originally put it up, but we still have wonderful examples of the women here.
Thanks a lot, Kate. That was really fabulous. I really enjoyed it.
If I can jump back in again and reference my time at Berkeley, it was Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes and whatnot that ended up populating Northern California's hippiedom all over the place, and probably this concept of art and farming, living off the land to create a different sort of society that traces its way back to Black Mountain. We find Fuller's influence in studies in physics these days that are involved with graphene and whatnot, buckyballs, and in Southern California, you got the whole art community that's sort of centered around Rauschenberg, and it's really amazing that that Black Mountain became a kind of a skeleton for 1950s, 60s, 70s American art in so many ways. What's happened with music from Cage's influence and dance from Cunningham. It's hard to touch art in America and not touch Black Mountain.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of those things. We have both people who live here and people coming from abroad who come in our doors and they're like, I don't know anything about Black Mountain College. And then they'll immediately find like 5 artists that they have had this lifelong relationship with in some way. And so it's like pulling a string, and then all of a sudden you're at this epicenter of everything, which is so exciting.
Yeah, it really is. Well,
Kate, I want to thank you very much. You have provided us just an engaging, an informative, an exciting experience today. And I am just wondering, we feel so lucky to have you here in Asheville, and I am just wondering how they got lucky enough to get you there. What is your background?
I'm lucky. So I think, yeah, Jean, you mentioned that you are a UNC Chapel Hill alum. I went to UNC Asheville for undergrad, studied art history. Big props to Lisa Rundquist, who is my mentor there. And then went and got my master's in art history at UNC Chapel Hill, and was the luckiest person in the world that I got a job here the week of graduation from my graduate degree in art history. So I've been here for going on, I think, 4 years now, and just we're a team of 4. We do everything together, and we're just very lucky to have this kind of we try to keep that Black Mountain College idea of collaboration, non-hierarchical experience going through everything we do. So I am very, very lucky to be a part of this little family.
Well, we are lucky to have you. I, for one, will be sending in my renewed membership, which I am sorry I have been behind on, but I've been busy.
Yes, a lot going on.
Anyway, so I will do that. And I do want to let all of you know that the program tomorrow is also going to be very exciting. These have all been different, and that's what's been so much fun about this. But tomorrow you are going to meet 3 artists who have all been very involved in one way or another with the Southern Highland Craft Guild. One has combined history with glass. One has, I don't know, am I supposed to be hitting something? I guess you can see me. One is providing a look at his glass and history and some amazing glass jugs. That's very, ceramic face jugs are so important here in North Carolina, but these are done in glass. So that's Mike Hatch. My friend Robert Milnes, who is a story in and of himself, but a phenomenal ceramic artists. I know that I took Susan Hirschfield and her husband Michael to visit him, and that was such a wonderful day in his studio. So we will replicate some of that. And then Amy Brandenburg, who's a jeweler. We're going to go and visit each of them in their studios. There's going to be some demos, and we're going to learn about the 90-year history. They're older than Black Mountain College. 90 years, over 800 Appalachian artists. They've touched the life of 800 artists. So tomorrow will be very different, but equally exciting. And I hope that you will correspond with Kate, correspond with me and Bob, that we keep this conversation going. And let others know they can still sign on. We had someone sign on at 3:30 this afternoon with a ticket, so it's still happening. Bob, would you like to close, add some information? I'm going to personally talk to you about time at Berkeley. My
Okay.
daughter, the sister-in-law was a Berkeley student as well.
Well, I really don't have too much to add other than look in your emails. We will be sending you these links to all of the presentations that we've seen so far. That is all the galleries, including today's. And please join us tomorrow. It should be a terrific time. Kate, I want to thank you very much. Delightful presentation. If you wouldn't mind, Kate, stay on when I close this off, something I'd like to speak with you about. Otherwise, for everybody else, thank you very much. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for coming.
Thank y'all.